really ask everyone. So I'm going to start again. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Oxbridge AIx Masterclasses. My name is Udai, and I'm focused on helping you guys sell your dreams and your vision. And within this masterclass, my only request is if you have questions, just wait for me to finish first. You can interrupt, but I'm happy to answer any and all questions and go through scenarios, whatever works best for you. As I said, this is the first time I've done this, so I'm also not entirely sure how it's going to be looking at myself while I talk, but I've done pitches before, and I reckon it should be good fun. Anything before we start the next 3 minutes that anyone is hoping we cover in today's session?
Just happy to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you as well, man. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah. We had some chocolates from the homeland yesterday. Someone brought. Yeah. Cool. Hey, Andrea. Hi, Mahad. Matthias.
Hello.
Cool. It's good fun.
Hey, Udai, how are you?
What's up, Udai?
Yeah, it's exciting times. So I'm just going to try sharing my screen. Here we go. This first. Ah, cool. Nice for that. Guys, can you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Gave me the chance to actually create a template for masterclasses as well. For 1 more minute. As you can see, I do not look like that person anymore. But the reason I like that picture so much, other than the fact that it's my mom's favorite picture of me, is because I want to talk about how old I was when I really got started in sales. Sorry, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, but it's that's me in the end of my undergrad. That's what I look like, and that's how I looked essentially when I closed my first deal with 24 million. So I wanted, especially for those who are joining us who've at the starting of their career or their founding journey, I want them to know and understand like it's not about age. It's though as we get older, we get wiser. It is much more about just how you feel and things that I'm going to talk about today. I must admit that it's going to be a bit tricky for me to keep everyone joining while I'm doing this at the same time. Haneen, are you on the call?
Oh, there I am. It's Kritika, so I can help.
Yeah, you can help. Did you join in on the account?
I can sign out and join back in if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Just going to get started now. So I can't see any of you. I'm just looking at my own screen. I'm just checking this works. So this is a sales series that we're starting because 2026 is about all of us killing it. And we're going to kill it by really honing in on go-to-market, sales, UI, UX, amongst a few other things, especially in the AI age where these things are getting disrupted and changed. In this series, first, I will talk about myself, but we're just going to be looking at the introduction to sales. I'll have a definition, an understanding, a process, and a growth. There's going to be jumping into the deep end, listening to ask questions, B2B organizations to touch on how B2B sales is different, and then authenticity and being yourself, which I think is the fundamental ingredient to good sales. So who am I? I am Udai Dhamija. Hopefully one day we'll just be called Udai. And I'm a grandma's boy. My nani, mother's mother, she raised me, and she's the lady who introduced me to a lot of these values that I'm going to talk about today, because I think effective sales comes from within, being very passionate. So my grandmother was married to a general, and both her husband and her son loved Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and Influence People, but she hated that book, and that hatred of that book and how manipulative it can be is something that she's really instilled in me. So I've always ventured away from using some of the techniques that are predominantly used there to fool people into feeling that you are a friend when you're not necessarily there. Now, my family itself, which is also quite important, we're a family of entrepreneurs, but also from a sense of service. My uncle, one of them, he had e-bookers, which he sold for almost $500 million. That was when I was a teenager. His idea of family dinners was us doing his Harvard business case studies for him and eating Chinese food as compensation. My mother's brother was a very big player in turnaround management and frontier markets, and he mentored and trained me for over 10 years. Some of the people that I've been very lucky to learn under were thanks to his introductions. My mother's also an entrepreneur, and between all of these individuals, growing up, and including my dad, they all had their different styles of how they used to not just sell themselves, but talk about life and look at these elements. And they would put us in very funny situations. So my dad, for example, once put me in front of a bull. I will talk about that story potentially later, just to be able to practice talking to a bull as it was walking towards me. Similarly, my uncle once, when I was 26, he kind of forced me in a situation where I had to sell not just what I was building, but the way he put it, charm as many people as I could. And I didn't really appreciate the exercise because I felt I had to prove something to him versus trying to be authentic. And my life journey started, I guess, my first startup, I was starting while I was in undergrad. It's focused on rural communities, providing cold storage infrastructure for them. And I built that while I was studying mathematics and then urban planning and international studies with a focus on religion. I then worked for the two richest Indians in America, Ravi Sadhwan and Manoj Bhargava, and their company is called 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy, if you're exposed to the US and you go to Walgreens or 7-Eleven, it's a little shot drink. And their genius was not only understanding how to package all of this, but to market it really effectively. And so they do 1.2 billion in sales every year, just selling that. So Ravi was my mentor. He was the first boss that I really had. And it was working for him, his family office, where I was commercializing medtech and nanotech portfolio, including being exposed to clean energy and pure water technologies. That some of the stories I'll share with you will come today. And then after that, I worked in private equity in Africa. One of the projects which we'll talk a little bit about is me trying to set up a bicycle company and selling bicycles to a market in countries like Africa where people don't really have money, and how I went about doing that. And then we go to the question of trust and Tukey and Oxbridge AIx. So trust is, in my opinion, means everything. And we're going to be talking about relationships and how trust kind of connects with that. But what I basically spent the past 8 years obsessed with is the trinity between AI, insecure employment, which is when you don't have financial security or you're juggling multiple jobs or you're not entirely sure how to have ownership of your time. So we all kind of fall into this if we're entrepreneurs. The three of those things combined with a business model of market networks, which is where you have a marketplace, a community or a social network, and a SaaS product. So AngelList is a very simple example of that. Oxbridge AIx and everything I've done in life has really come about because when I get really angry, and I'm genuinely quite angry inside all the time, I like to build. And so it's kind of like getting really obsessed or appreciative of a certain problem and taking it from there. So that's my quick introduction. And to get things started, I want to talk about Sales 101, which is people. And my definition of sales, and I don't think if you put this in Google, you get the same definition, but my definition of sales is the art of communicating with confidence and communicating value. Because fundamentally, you are trying to share the value in something to someone else. You don't have to necessarily do anything much more than that, but when you create value or when you share value, that is fundamental. And so confidence is more about like your ability to be comfortable with yourself and what you're doing. Because the more comfortable you are, the more ease you are, and the more able you are to communicate it very, very nicely, effectively, and in a passionate way. So within the concept of Sales 101, and I talk about people, there's a process, and that process starts with understanding. So there's a search. We all have assumptions and we all have hypotheses. Even someone who wants to sell refrigerators to Eskimos has to ask the question like an assumption that people need it, and why would they need it? But going in that search and exploring and understanding why that's important is, I think, a huge part of the sales cycle. So, when you're closing, you're leading people to decision after you've made an understanding. Even with a negotiation, the real art comes around whether you have effectively not just got the knowledge and the information for the other person, but then could you use that information to create value for them? And even if it's a no, it's fantastic because you're not just saving yourself time, but you're understanding something better to help you with the next person. The reason you have these three, understanding, process, and intuition, with growth is that the process is connected to self-growth and building this intuition of people. And so the more we do, the more we practice, the more we get better at not only just understanding ourselves, but building an intuition of what is going to work. The best salespeople have not one pitch, but 100 pitches, and they're constantly adaptable because when you have a fundamental understanding of not just people, what people want, you can adapt, you can adjust because everything is just vocabulary and semantics, but it's that reaching to the emotion and connecting it with the value that's very, very important. So I'm going to start with the next section, which is called jumping into the deep end. And here I'm just going to reflect a little bit about some of the things that I did in my life that I feel really helped me build trust in myself. I talked about facing bulls. So the story is very simple. I used to,
One sec.
yeah.
Sorry. I don't know if you're changing your slides. We can still just see the title slide.
Oh, really?
That's
Oh, shit.
one. But the other
Okay.
one is that most of us, not most, a few of us can't see the slides at all. So could I just ask if you could reshare?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you for doing that because
Thank
I
you.
was on a completely different slide. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we can still just see the title.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure your story
Okay.
made sense. The slides.
Yeah. So let's do this. There. Let me try. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can. It's a slide with you and Christina, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
So all you really
Yeah.
missed, if you heard me talk, that's basically what I was doing because my slides are more a utility than a reality. So this was the first slide about me while I was talking about my grandma, my nanny, a bit about my life journey, trust, Tiki, and Oxbridge AIx. You'll see I'm using pictures of things that are some of my favorite memories, and I'm constantly selling myself and what I'm doing. So this is Oxbridge AIx and the challenge. This is just to walk through like the different pages and different things that I'll be talking about, like I mentioned. And this was the sales 101. And I'm going to repeat the definition. To me, sales is the art of communicating confidence and value. So this is the slide where I was on when Kritika shared where we are. And so thank you for that, Kritika. So jumping into the deep end. For me, first and foremost, it's like how do we learn about ourselves and build trust in ourselves, because that confidence, as I said earlier, it has to, it comes from within. It's not necessarily just from outside, but sometimes it can't come from within. And how do you really start? We're building confidence when you don't feel that connection to your inner self. So the facing bull story is, I was in the 5th grade. I was house captain of one of my houses, and one of my teachers used to, she kind of used to put a lot of pressure on me and some of my colleagues to um, participate in all sorts of different things to represent. And there were times when it was just impossible, and it was very stressful. So my dad, in his infinite wisdom, he in those days in India, there used to be cows and bulls everywhere, and so he took me outside, and there was a bull coming, and he made me stand still. Yeah, I wasn't wearing red, but he made me stand still, and he made me look straight at the bull and talk to the bull as if it was my teacher. And I was not allowed to move until I was able to say it with confidence. I didn't have that many feet, but I managed to get there. But in a similarly, I did a lot of public speaking when I was younger, not because I necessarily had affinity. I just got told to do it. And I remember in 2nd grade being completely silent in front of 1,000 people. But I never have been silent since that day. Now, the counting to 20 story is a similar kind of thing. I used to have this exercise when I was 15 that I used to feel counting to 3 was not sometimes enough. Counting to 10, sometimes I would still chicken out. But when you count to 20, you kind of get bored because you're like really looking at yourself in the mirror and saying like, you counted to 20, you're not going to jump. This is about you being scared. So why don't you just jump? And there used to be a pool, and in the dead of winter in Delhi, where it still used to get to like 2 degrees, I used to jump in the deep end of the pool on the count of 20, just to make myself feel ready that, if I push myself, I could do it. Similarly, when I was 16, I spent a summer in Helsinki. My godparents are Finnish, and I was doing an internship for eBookers, which was my uncle's company at the time. And I was very shy with girls. So I told myself that I would, by the end of the summer, I would go be much more comfortable. And I basically went around, and any person that I thought was charming, I would introduce myself and I would talk to, and I would count to 20 to get there. I think I was a bit lucky that I chose Finland of all places, because people are a bit shy there and introverted, and being very extroverted, it works in your favor. But by the end of the summer, I had a girlfriend. I don't think I've ever been really shy about introducing myself to anyone since then. But there's this sense of like doing practices, doing things that help you build confidence and help you understand yourself, because you have to face yourself in a mirror, like I said in the counting 20 example. But jumping the deep end within sales is also just that question of just getting started and moving forward, and making yourself feel that it's not the end of the world. So this case study that I want to give you, I'm brief with it to some extent. So the first ever sales meeting I ever had when I was working for Ravi and Manoj was, I was selling to cardiologists, and I had a meeting with one of the 5 best cardiologists in the country. I'd flown from Singapore just for the meeting. Getting a meeting was the easy part. So a lot of people say, oh, it's very easy when you get a warm introduction. It really helps. I'm not necessarily people in that camp, because I get 40% success rates with cold emails because of, and we'll talk about that later. But I had a meeting with Dr. Ganesh Mani, and in India, especially when you're trying to speak to doctors, it's probably, I say India, it's kind of almost everywhere. You have to wait and wait and wait. And so I got there in the waiting room. I spent 6 hours waiting, didn't get my chance. Came back the next day, waited, didn't get my chance. Started speaking to the secretary of Dr. Mani, and then on the 3rd day, I got given the introduction, and I came in. And this is just by the fact that the head of the hospital group was the one who had orchestrated for me to go meet them. right? So it gives you an idea. Warm introduction is great, but there's a lot of different elements happening. And when we talk about the B2B org chart later, we'll talk a little bit about gatekeepers. But I spent 5 minutes in that room before I was told, in a not necessarily polite way, that I should come back once I've learned medicine. For someone who'd never studied medicine, that seemed very daunting. And it was obviously, it was my first job. It was quite stressful. I had flown countries to meet this person, and I thought potentially this was an absolute disaster. I didn't think it was a failure, but I thought it was a complete disaster. Um, we had someone in the engineering department of our company who, a gentleman called Dr. Jack Juni, who's a medical inventor specialized in creating a lot of different devices, not just for cardio, but for livers. And I spoke to him, and I reached out to him, and I explained to him the situation, and he was very kind, and he said, "I'll teach you medicine." I mean, I'm not saying he taught me everything, but for 3 months, every Saturday morning, he would wake up, because he lived in Michigan, he would wake up at 5 in the morning in order to teach me an hour or two of how things worked. And through those conversations with him and learning from his perspective what was so special about the medical device that I was trying to sell, I learned sound bites that really resonated with doctors, but with people in the industry. I then proceeded to practice that. I was during those 3 months, it's not like I didn't do anything. I was constantly practicing. I was also shadowing. Ravi, who was the CEO, even though he was the CEO, I was actually under a managing director and then head of department. Ravi is just unbelievable salesperson. He just had like an Elon Musk ability to take very complex things and explain it to you in simple English. That is not an art, as you can see, that I have mastered, but here I am. My managing director, a guy who used to be a partner at Accenture and also used to be in the Singaporean Navy, he taught me process and how to potentially do more research and understanding. And then my head of department, she just basically sent me to speak to as many people as I could. So after about 3 months of that practice, I began to get a feel of what worked for different types of archetypes. When I went back to Dr. Mani, I didn't go 3 months exactly. I went 6 months. I'd already spoken to the other 4 top 5 cardiologists, and we were already in line to start making pilots and even creating a special service with one of them. And at the end of that 6 months, it wasn't 5 minutes. I spoke to him for over an hour. And at the end of that hour, he was like, "How do we move forward?" And so none of that would have happened without this first just jumping in the deep end, learning to build trust in myself, learning that what this gentleman already said to me is what's really important to him to be able to trust me, and then focusing on that so that I can speak his language. And so this is one of the first case studies. And this happened in India back in 2014. The other thing that I really want to highlight in sales that is fundamental is listening and asking questions. So in the team, everyone has heard me talk about how I call assumptions the bane of all evil. But for this purpose, I'll say assumptions are in everyone's head. They're not necessarily reality. Everyone is important, and it's our job to make people feel that they are important. And it is our job to ask questions so that we can test our assumptions and our hypotheses. Because if we just make assumptions and think we know better, and this is something we are all, I guess, blamed for doing. And I think the smarter you are, the more elite of an institution you come from, the more assumptions you're comfortable to make. But humility really helps with sales, because you might feel fantastic. You might feel that you can convince people to do a lot of different things or buy a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, the moment you think you're better than someone, you're not going to win, because they make the decision. And no one's going to make a decision uncomfortably. If you force them to make a decision, they're not going to like it. So making them feel important, and a part of that training of listening and asking questions. I think the biggest gift that's happened in business is the word customer discovery, the term, where every startup founder should really learn how to do this. It's basically research exercise. You go and you speak to as many people, 100, 200 people as you can, and by doing so, you are not telling people what you're doing. The part of you that feels the need to validate yourself, this is when you have to suppress that. You just focus on them, understanding what is important to them, what is the problem that they're dealing with. And beyond that, it's a case of being very patient as you listen, because sometimes it takes multiple conversations. I've already given you one case study where it took 6 months to make a conversation where it was. So the case study, which really exemplifies, in my experience, customer discovery and how listening and asking questions is really powerful, is when I worked and was starting Tuki, and I was doing it for 2-3 years in Portugal. And just to give you the top line, I had 1 second. We have a question.
Hi, sorry, okay, it's me. We're having slide issues again. I think you've changed to your next slide, but I still see jumping into the deep end. Sorry to interrupt your flow. I just want to let you know. I still see jumping into the deep end. Would you want me to share your slides in the chat? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think you can share. Yeah, this is
okay. I'll share. But
we
yes,
are going to have recording, and we are going to make this available to everyone through the community platform. But happy to share if because the slides themselves are more demonstrated, because I think the main thing is how I speak and what I'm saying to you guys. But yeah, the case study with Portugal, just to give you an idea. I don't speak Portuguese. A lot of people in Portugal speak English. It's fantastic, especially in Lisbon. But we got into an accelerator, and we were there. It was not the best deal. It was like 40K for 10%. But as one of my uncles said, it's the only deal I had, so it was the best deal. And so I went, and it was a 5-month program, and I had 5 months to get started. So we started going door to door to every single restaurant. We had some introductions, but it was the door-to-door experiences that really made things happen. And in the first 2 weeks, just learning when was the right time to go to a restaurant, because I'd already done this in San Francisco and Palo Alto, because I started Tuki at Stanford, but this was a completely different country. I didn't want to make assumptions, and we started looking at two sides of the problem, because in insecure employment, you have it's really about how much flexibility a person really has. And one side of the problem is the workers, and on the other side, it's the recruiting. So we created 2 tools. One was a recruiting system, and then the other one was a scheduling system. So with the recruiting system, we had something like, in the end, almost 1,900 people join the community for recruiting. And we interviewed not just as a part of the scheduling and the recruiting platform, we interviewed almost, I think, 400 individuals. And part of those interviews, people I was training and some of my interns, part of that recruiting was also customer discovery. We wanted to really understand the challenges and difficulties that people had. And because in the first step, like in Palo Alto, we knew that not all restaurant workers and hospitality workers, because that was the industry we were focused on, not all of them had a computer. We knew that most of them were on Android, but we didn't quite appreciate or understand how difficult and challenging it was for people to apply for jobs through a phone back in 2017, 18, 19. It was really, really difficult. So there's all these things that we learned that was fascinating. And there's also these elements of we found out and we discovered that refugees actually made a huge bulk of the community that we were part of, or that we were building. And one of their major problems was not necessarily finding a job, it was abuse at the job. And there was a case study where we had a Filipino gentleman who actually was a Swedish citizen, so he had every single right, like in that country, labor laws. And because he didn't speak Portuguese, the manager would forget that he had the right documentation, and he wasn't even allowed to drink water during his shift. So there's all this understanding, and by understanding those pain points and those things, it gravitated our focus and our communication on what we really cared about is helping, empower these people. And similarly on the scheduling side. And so I think we had like 39 or 40 pre-product customers who signed up for us. I spent a year getting to know these restaurants. Some of them had groups. Some of them were quite big. There's even a case where we want to pilot with $1 billion company that had 300 restaurants as well. And so they wanted us to start with their company. But aside from them, we had like 39, 40 different companies that just saw that we showed up and we would speak to every single one of their workers. When we launched our first MVP, it was MVP 3 technically, with one of the restaurant groups, even though it was a bit slow and it wasn't like clunky and it was a bit annoying, the data was fascinating. I was able to within a month see who was dating who. And I also figured that out because, I got to know these people a bit better. So listening is fundamental, and customer discovery and patience, that really leads to effect. Now, in today's day and age where people might not care so much about being patient, and you might think, oh, that's a cheat code, you just waited. No, I cared. I invested my time, my energy, my life into other people's problems because what did I want? I wanted to create value for them. And when I listened, they had a very good understanding that I wasn't doing this for just me. I was doing this for them as well. And so I'm changing the slide down. Can everyone see this slide?
No.
No. Oh yeah, I'm really struggling with Teams today. I'm gonna have to tell our friends at Microsoft. So can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is a very simple introduction, but it's the most important B2B sales concept that I think you guys should learn. And this is what I learned on my first weekend working in Singapore, which is that you have these archetypes in an organization. And when you're looking to do sales, don't make the assumption that the CEO or the CMO or the chief operating officer, that they are the ones making the decision. I'm going to give you examples that hopefully convey that in a bit. You have to discover, again, customer discovery. Who is the decision maker? You can start anywhere. It doesn't matter, because it's not just having one person who can tell you how everything works in a company, because you also have culture and different things. Then you have the champions. So in the cases of the restaurants, like I talked about, the champions were not necessarily the managers. They weren't necessarily the owners. We had a lot of support from the owners because they just saw us improving productivity and reducing churn. The champions were the barista or the cook who just really liked the fact that we came every day, and we would do small things like I once stepped in and did shifts for people just because I wanted to know what that looked like and felt like. So I did that for like 2 weeks, and I became friends with these people and then became champions, and then they spoke about us. Then you have the gatekeepers. Now, they control access to the decision makers. And so one of the most important people in any organization is someone's personal assistant or executive assistant. And if you show this person a lot of respect, you'd be surprised how they will try and find a way for you to get to meet the person. Like I've given you one example already, right, of being a little charming, being polite. I got the first meeting with Dr. Ganesh Mani despite his boss telling him he should meet me. But this happened all the time. I had a cousin who used to do sales for American Express, and he taught me a trick where, especially in countries like India where they love tea, if you ask, when people offer you tea or coffee, say yes, even if you don't drink it, because they can't be rude and kick you out until you finish your cup of tea. And that was really, really fun. That was a really fun thing for me to learn. I'm very resistant to caffeine. I get heart palpitations, right? But there were times when I drank a lot of tea just because they couldn't get rid of me, and that helped me learn and train. Then you have the converts who start skeptical and you convert them over time. Then there's the enemies. actively opposing your solution. There could be competitors. There could be people on your own team who are jealous. In Singapore, the senior sales executive did not like the fact that I was doing so well, and I had no idea that he did not like me, and he used to try and get me in trouble. So, some countries like Singapore, they have dedicated hotels where you can pay by the hour for a room. And I did not know that in that way. I was very naive. And until I got my immigration papers sorted out, they were trying to put me up in a hotel, and they put me up in a hotel. And so he was trying to make me feel like, oh, for the sake of the company, surely you should stay in a cheaper hotel, right? And he was giving me suggestions. And I'm just so grateful and lucky that I did not mention the hotels that he said, right? When I said to my boss and the head of HR that, I'm happy to stay in a cheaper place, because if I did, it would have looked really bad. And I was customer facing. And if anyone assumed that I lived in a particular district, right, they would find it a little bit funny. You can't tell, it's hard to tell a billionaire, because I was meeting a billionaire a month or every 2 weeks and trying to sell to them. It's very hard to tell them that you live in the red light district sometimes. It just looks a bit funny, But this guy did it. He was really fucking fucked up. And he was just he didn't care about the success of the company. He just cared about how he looked, And so you have enemies inside and you have enemies outside. Then you have frenemies who sing your praises publicly, but inside they're just looking for a way to be patient until they can put you aside, and we all live. I'm sure everyone can recognize these people in our lives. Then you got your competitors, and the competition doesn't necessarily have to be external. It could be internal. It could be in the company. So once you were selling cloud, there's actually very early use of AI to do diagnostics on imaging in healthcare, and classic example of how you have multiple decision makers. So I had a meeting with the biggest hospital in India, and that hospital, the COO of that hospital group is my cousin, and his brother, his father-in-law is one of the biggest decision makers when it comes to cardio. He's one of the 5 top people. But the person I had to care about were not these people. I had to care about a random person in the organization who was 2 years younger to me, and he was my competition because I discovered that someone had bribed him to make sure the competitor had a better case. And this shit happens, especially if you work in procurement. Otherwise, there are all these different situations that matter. Now, this screenshot or this video or image that I made in Gemini earlier today, it's just very simple. You have an organization chart. I encourage all of you, whenever you're trying to sell B2B, create the organization chart. You will not necessarily find it online. Sometimes you're lucky. Everyone tells you, start to draw it. Feed it into Claude, feed it into Gemini, ask it to do that, and then label who these people are, create the map. And the reason why this is so particularly valuable is that you can then prioritize all the individuals who are going to be on your side. So for all those enemies, competitors, frenemies, right, you either need to try and way to convert them, or you need to stack everything else against them. Some situations, you just have an individual who has the decision maker's ear, and you might wonder, why is this person important? But they're trusted, right? And if you don't think you can convert that person, sometimes it's better to just reduce the prioritization of that particular client or potential customer, or to just go to someone else, right? I'll give you an example. There's another startup that was speaking to a potential investor, and the person in the middle, they were on the call and they brought someone else, and this person, they didn't even necessarily introduce themselves too much, right? But we made sure that everyone on that call was treated with respect, was given the importance, and then find out that that person was the best friend of this footballer who's involved in the conversation for that, right? And now that is moving forward in at least the next step. So the case study I want to give you with Zimbabwe on this, and then we'll go to the next slide, and then I want to open up for Q&A, and I'm here to answer questions and answers in any kind of circumstances as much as you guys want. But in Zimbabwe, as I said, one of the projects I was involved in was trying to sell bicycles. And, it's the country with 92% unemployment or insecure employment. It's really tough. It takes you 3 months because the weather's so good and it's such a beautiful place to realize just how much poverty there is. And there's people on every corner waiting for people to come up to them just to give them a job, right? So how do you sell a bicycle to these people, right? It's very easy to say that it's a better bicycle because most of the market had really bad bicycles manufactured in a part of Asia that I will not mention by name that lasted only 6 months. And we were getting these manufactured because I happen to know all the bicycle manufacturers in India. And luckily went to school with some of these people or otherwise. And so we were getting customized bicycles made for Africa, just for us, just to test out this market. And if the market worked really well, we had the distribution because the product equity firm was massive across Africa. We had the distribution to basically open the continent up, right? So I was given 3 months to sell 90,000 of stock. And I managed to sell half the stock in 2 months, which I'm still very happy about. But it wasn't enough for us at that stage of a company to say like, okay, this is worth a kid who was, I wasn't that young but I was earning 100K a year after taxes, and they didn't think that was worth my time. But how did I do it? Customer discovery. I went and spoke to every single factory that I could find, every farm, every single individual. We spoke to about 400 people in 2-3 weeks. At the same time, we made the entire assembly line much more efficient. I saved $30 per product before we even get to it. And what we realized was that the owners of the farms and the owners of the factories were very, very happy to pay for the bicycles. They just needed a mechanism for them to be able to take it out like an advance or to take it out over time, right? And that's how we did it. Moment we figured it out, we actually sold 45K in stock in 5 weeks. And the reason it took 5 weeks is because, again, you have to drive everywhere. It's a pretty big country, right? You don't know everyone's phone number. Not everyone's online. But we also then managed to get all the cash and carry and supermarket companies to get really invested and interested because no one was doing this and they saw this huge opportunity, but then we needed to create a financial instrument. So then we got a micro lender to say yes. Now, the reason why this failed in the end was there was a frenemy or an enemy in my own company. There was a director of the company who's at my equal, and I learned that he was getting kickbacks over even something as small as $50 worth of printing for a poster or for posters. And so after I had negotiated a deal where we were selling bicycles for $150 a pop, and it was only going to cost in interest $30 more. That's the deal I negotiated. From $150 to $180, people are happy over 2 years to pay that, even when they've got such dire situation. So he went behind my back, and I think I had to go to Cape Town for a trip. And when I came back, he basically got the person to charge $250. And so it was $100 in interest that people had to pay. And I was so confused. And then when I realized what really happened, I basically said, I'm never going to do this to my customer. And so I basically said, no. And because I said no there, we couldn't go forward, and you guys know the rest. So the organization chart and the B2B was so fundamental because with every one of these farms, every one of these factories, we did this work. We made sure we knew who was important. And sometimes it wasn't the owner, it was the owner's wife, right? Sometimes it wasn't the foreman in the factory, it was the security guard, right? And so doing this can really, really make a difference. And I really encourage, and I hope that I've given enough for people to be able to start doing this themselves. Now I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can share it again. All right, has it changed? Can you see authenticity being yourself? I've chosen this picture. This was earlier this year. You see these two little munchkins. That's my cousin, my two cousin brothers. The eldest cousin, his 3 kids, and we've got the twins, the force twins as we like to call them, right? I love my family. The people I love and what I care about. I'm happy to be in my Oxy AI hoodie anytime and all the time because that's what I love. And that's who I want to be, right? And so when you're building relationship, because sales and business is about relationships. So when you're building relationships, everyone is trying to figure out whether they can trust you. Because especially in sales, you're going up to someone, you've got an agenda, right? Everyone can smell it a mile away. So how do you make people trust you? You focus on building a relationship, something that stands the test of time, not something that the moment you get it, you just disappear. And so to emphasize that, why selling your way, meaning what is authentic to you, what makes you comfortable, why is that best? Is because when you are comfortable, when you are yourself, people just see it. Everyone has a bullshit detector in them. Some people just listen to it more than others. But when you're authentic, there's no bullshit, right? And it's much, much easier to sell something that you care about, that you believe in. So in all of the projects that I've been involved in, I've been very lucky that I saw the potential and I really believed in the mission. And even especially with my own startup, that's what I do. It's my dream. I really believe in it. And sometimes when you're training your team, they don't see it or people don't see it. So there's different elements that you have to pay attention to where they can see it. So for us, we're a value first company, right? An organization. That means we want to walk the walk and we want to show people who we are. We want to lead by example, right? So if I have, like in Oxbridge AIx right now, we've got another founder, Mihai is on the call, he's crashing with me. Like I'm showing everyone, in not just with that example, but other examples, that you guys come first to me because it genuinely is the case, right? I appreciated when people did that for me. When I lived in the Bay, I didn't pay for rent out of 8 months for more than 3 weeks because people just took care of me. Why? Because they just saw that it's better to give than to just thinking about what you're getting. That's what I think, right? I'm simplifying it a little bit. Now, I'll give you an example of a case study, a simple story. This is again, US, India, health, med tech, where I feel authenticity won the day in the end. There's 3 brothers. 3 brothers who made their millions selling toothpaste. And do you guys all know Aquafresh? Has anyone here heard of Aquafresh? Yeah, I can see some nods, right? So they used to be the white label manufacturers for Aquafresh, okay? And when they sold it, I think for about 200 million. So I was introduced to them, and one brother was positioning himself as the yoga guru for the US. The other brother was positioning himself as the Ayurvedic guru for Southeast Asia. Or maybe less guru, he's just really into that. And then the third brother was completely different. And I should be cautious about this story because now I mentioned Aquafresh, they will know who I'm talking about. But either way, we're talking about authenticity, right? The third brother is actually the one I got along with the most. Like affinity, this guy could be a friend, we could go hang out, we'd enjoy the same sports, all of that. But there was one moment when I asked him what was his dream. He wanted to make this beautiful Shangri-La corner of the Himalayas into the next Vegas because he saw the opportunity commercially for it. And that broke my heart when I heard it because Rural Boost, the startup that I, had in my undergrad, that was inspired by the sustainable values, the nature that I saw in the Himalayas in Sikkim. And so his idea of making this part of the world which you have something growing out of every single nook and cranny, right, into this commercial heavy place, I had to say something. saying something to him in that moment, and I was very diplomatic. I was, something I'm sure my teachers here in England were very proud of. But I had to say that I didn't think it was a good idea. This guy was the only person left in selling to the group, because the other two brothers had already said yes. I lost the deal because I was authentic. But even though I lost that deal, the other two brothers, and it's been 10 years, they're still accessible, and they've, I believe they even offered me a job once for a company that they were trying to build. So authenticity is key, and sometimes we're pushed to our limits to compromise on our ethics. But if the moment you lie, so I don't ever like to lie. I tell all my founders, never lie, especially not to VCs, especially not to your customers. The moment you actually lie, and there's living on the line, and there's, managing expectations. But the moment you lie and you're caught, you lose trust forever. And it's much steeper climb to build trust than it is to, find another way to convince them that you're creating value for them. Now, with that, that's the end of my, let's call it, sermon. And I just want to share a little bit that this is part of a series. I'm going to close my screen again and share it again to refix this for next time. Can you guys see? So today was the introduction, and I hope, please be very raw with your feedback. I'll try to be very raw with you guys. But the next time we do this, I'm going to be looking at drafting, cold emails, cold calls, scripts versus bullet points, exercises to build confidence, why rejection is actually your best friend. Part 3 is going to be about building an actual sales plan and strategy, how passion can lead to conversations. I've talked a bit about this, but I'll go into detail and in a much more constructive way. Understanding the different types of people you're speaking to. This is less about archetypes. This is much more about personas. Personas in terms of, within that particular customer break, your go-to-market strategy, your ideal customer kind of concept, how to tag team in sales, and how to do that really effectively, because that's like when you do it really well, it's really amazing. I love doing it with Kritika, who's on the call. Part 4, going above and beyond, maximizing your sales flow, passion as your secret weapon. I know I talk about passion every time, but really making it your secret weapon, always remembering to ask for follow-ups. And then the final one is confidence, and how execution and team are the biggest trump cards of all of them. Now, with that, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I would love to answer any and all questions you might have.
Okay, can I start?
Yes, Mahat, go for it.
Okay.
Do this. Mahat, go for it.
I think you're muted. You have to unmute, because I can see you're talking, but you're muted.
Okay. Oh, yeah, managed. Thank you. Thank you for your enlightening and wonderful talk. I'm a medical doctor, by the way, and I think AI is, you can correct me, because my background basically is medical. I'm a surgeon by trade. I worked for the NHS for 15 years. And I'm currently doing a DPhil in Oxford. So even yesterday, I used AI to help me CT scan of a stroke patient, my feeling is that we are on a beginning of something big and something quite revolutionary. But I personally would like to, I want to do startup for healthcare use. And I think, although I have very little knowledge about IT and AI, I can see the potential. I live with it. I can see that every day, the challenges that I face, and probably the use of technology could enhance not only my care, but also the speed, the efficiency, the capacity to deliver, and the cost saving for the society by and large. So I welcome anyone who would like to join me and coach me and help me. But I think I was also looking for some sort of a guide and advice how to basically build a company in terms of how you pitch your your funding, how you get a grant, how you kind of start from the basic blocks and how you
Sure.
kind of build teams.
So Mahat, well, first of all, welcome to Oxbridge AIx. This is your community, right?
Thank you.
We have, I think, over 70 health tech life science AI startups in the community, or at least teams, and very happy to support you on your journey. We have a workshop. So after this, please, I'm just putting, Hanian, could you put our email down in the group? Or Kritika or Simon, anyone who's familiar. So please reach out. I'm going to give you access to another workshop that I gave, which is a pitch workshop I used to do for other accelerators and incubators, right? And it's a foundational kind of supplements what I like to think I did today, but it's just how to get started, right? But with yourself, the topic of customer discovery that I mentioned earlier, right? That is key and core. So what is the exact problem that you are trying to solve, right? You have to understand the problem. The best way to understand the problem, you can start with an assumption or hypothesis that this is a problem. I have all this extensive experience, right? But when you go and speak to people, you understand everything around it, right? From the problem, and you could start with one problem and gravitate into another, right? But from that problem, then you have the process of solutioning. While you're solutioning, you're iterative, testing and building. So the solution itself doesn't matter. It only matters when you've reached a stage where people actually want it. But to get to a place where people want it, it's just not as straightforward as thinking, I'm going to think my way to that solution, right? Putting in people's hands, seeing, because people, you're a doctor, you know this better than anyone else. People are completely unpredictable, right? No matter how much you tell someone not to do something, right?
Yes.
You still are in on Halloween with someone up something up the ass, which they shouldn't have, right? And so that's the foundation that I would like to encourage you to start with. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to get on a call with you anytime, where we can talk about it. I speak to about 4 founders on average a day, right? Part of the reason I did this workshop and we do masterclasses is that I've noticed patterns, right? And sales is this kind of thing where everyone wants it. It's so important, but people don't realize it's just about making yourself feel comfortable by talking about what you want to talk about, And then there's these other techniques and elements that I've introduced you to, right? But it's the same process with building a startup as it is with solving a problem. You want to iterate your way through experience and growth, right?
Yeah.
Reflection.
I would love to, if it's possible, actually to invite you for lunch in St. Cross or somewhere, or have a coffee with you, and actually then we can talk about. I mean, basically the issue that I face is based on my experience as either surgeon or as a clinician, and we can always run through some degree of look into as a logic and say, and I can tell you exactly what I'm thinking. The technology does exist out there. There's nothing new under the sun, but it's mainly how you optimize, adapt, and actually use. And I totally understand, especially in the UK, we have, things need to be, you have to be compliant, confidentiality, compatibility, user friendly, all that thing. But before we even get there, I think to say, this is the problem I have, and this is the solution I think we can prescribe. I'm a doctor. I prescribe solution every day almost.
Yeah.
They always don't go right.
Yeah.
But I haven't. Yeah.
No, but
So
I think you said it so effectively, Mahat, because all of these, what is a startup? The definition that Steve Blank says is it's a temporary organization on pursuit of a sustainable and repetitive business model. To make something like that, right, you have to solve many problems for yourself, for others, and otherwise, right? But you need to prioritize which problems you solve and which. And the first foremost problem that you need to solve is for your intended customer or the stakeholder that you care the most about. And that's key. If you can't solve their problem, you're not creating value for them.
Intended customer will be me, actually, to begin with.
Okay, cool. Well,
and many doctors that I work with, you know.
Yeah, but so again, like for you, understanding that base, even though it's part of your fraternity, you've been involved in it all your life. Different context relate to people sharing different things, and so I actually hate it. I'm not talking about you, obviously, or I don't want to disrespect anyone on the call, but I've worked with founders, even in my capacity as a mentor at Techstars. I worked with founders who are like, oh, I worked in this industry for 5 years. I know it. No, you don't. You know, you just know your perspective, your experience. Like, do you really know why the accountant doesn't like to submit the money at this time of day? You know, like, do you really understand that? You know, I'm just throwing out random examples. But with that, thank you for the invitation. I'd love to have coffee with you at lunch. Francisco used to work with me. He was Sync Cross as well. Very fond. You guys have very good food at lunch.
Yeah, we got 5-star food. I look forward. I'll email this email. I can see it. I took a picture of it. So thank you, Udai.
Simon, you had a question, right? You're welcome, Ohad. And until Simon returns, if anyone else has a question.
Oh yeah. I have a question. So you mentioned mapping out an organizational chart. I have this now, a big company called CCI Global. They're a B2B, what is it called? BPO. And they want to invest $300 million into Africa in terms of education and training. And we want to be a service provider for them in doing so. So I added them on the CEO and the COO on LinkedIn, and they accepted. But then you mentioned now, okay, there's an organizational chart, but like, how would you figure out like who the decision makers are? Like, how do you get the information? I find that that's the harder part. I feel like we can easily, scope out. I can go on LinkedIn and be like, find titles, but then, the rest, I don't know how to do.
So I'm gonna give you this example. Great question, by the way. So I met the CEO of Cafe Nero once, right? I've met him a few times, but like, I pitched to him and he was like, okay, cool, maybe we can use your tech, right? And he's the CEO, right? He's the founder CEO, Oxford guy, Stanford guy. Got to pitch to him. He was like, cool. He didn't quite see the problem we were trying to solve, but he was like, cool, there's something here. Introduced me to head of HR and head of operations. I made the assumption that, like most of the other restaurant groups and companies we were selling to back in the day, that operations is who would care the most about what we did, because we were doing operations for them, right? Our tool basically would change their operations, and then it would impact HR. The head of operations met me many times. He used to call us the brain, the AI tech we were building back in 2018, 19, 20. He would call it the brain, Then I find out on meeting number 4 that it's the head of HR that I had to care about, And I made the mistake by meeting her, not having met as much, to making her feel that she potentially wasn't as important. I don't know for certain, but I can assume, right? The reason I don't really know is the pandemic hit. My industry got fucked. I pivoted. Here I am, right? But with you, how would I go about it? First and foremost, I would see what information they're publicly sharing about who's in the organization. I would look at paying attention to elements of the culture that they're communicating, right? Now, this culture document comes from somewhere, but it's not necessarily true. I'll give you an example. Business schools, not ours or Judge, but business schools are very, very fixated often on presenting positioning themselves in a certain way. So when I was, I was on the waitlist at Berkeley and Yale, and I obviously spent some time at Stanford, but I was convinced by the marketing at Columbia University that it would be a great place for me to build my entrepreneurial dream, right? And I went through a process of spoke to over 130 MBAs across America and in Seattle, just to figure out. So I did customer discovery, right? And in that customer discovery, I not only figured out the right professors and stuff, but I just figured out, and I went to do the class, and I got to meet the professors I wanted to learn from. So I didn't even have to go to Columbia to hang out with them. But I figured out that that wasn't really the case, right? So, but you start with what you have, right? And you use that information and knowledge in order to define these hypotheses and these assumptions for you to test out. Then you start by speaking to people, especially in a case like yourself. It's actually really powerful to speak to people who used to work, not who currently work there, because they are much more comfortable talking about their old bosses and old colleagues when they don't have to worry about whether they can say something or not. But at the same time, you should speak to people, right? Now, Tamagoya is this incredible company in Japan that sells 70,000 bento boxes a day, right? Do you know who the most important person in that company is? Not the guy who made this incredible supply chain to service all these people every day in 3 or 4 hours, but it's the delivery truck drivers. And they pay their delivery truck drivers equivalent to 90 grand a year, because the drivers go out and they ask the question. They are the ones that are looking at who ate what, right? So find, everyone is going to have a perspective. Everyone is going to teach you a little bit of the shade, right? If you're building a long-term relationship with this customer, you're not just thinking about a 10 grand sale, right? You're thinking about recurring revenue. You're thinking about multiple life, right? You're thinking about all these different opportunities. I'm just throwing out numbers. It's worth the investment in time. To have a customer for life, it's worth the investment of time, right? Getting into a pilot is one way, but even you can use these sources or these processes to do that. But once you're there, ask questions, right? Become friends, understand people's lives better, right? You can do techniques and stuff to make people feel, there's some things that are universal. Like almost everyone loves their kid or kids. Almost everyone, I can make jokes, right, about some people just don't like kids, but this is something that I used to learn from my uncle, is that, if you genuinely care about the person, you're going to care about the family. And there's no easier way to show care than to try and see how you can create value for them and their family. This is a little bit of a Dale Carnegie trick, though. And I promise my grandma I won't teach you guys that. But it is, just examples. So you have to do the work.
Yeah,
and
you
over
mean
time, paying attention to people's families. It's a bit of a Dale Carnegie trick. You guys know me. I like those who know me well. I genuinely care and I ask questions. But sometimes I ask questions because I'm so insecure that people think I'm selfish. Because I'm definitely not. But yeah, I would start with doing the research. Now with AI, God, you're so lucky. Digest everything on Claude, help it create an organization chart, get it on every call you have with anyone connected, associated with the company, update the information, have your otter ready, right? Digest that information, figure out who your next people you should speak to, get them to introduce you. You can speed it up by at least 3 times. Simon's face is stuck on him smiling. I'll just assume he's really, really happy. But yeah. So more questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Any more questions, guys? Because yes, Maxim, I had a feeling. Yes.
Thank you. You're very much provisional as always. So my question is going to be the following. How many rejections when we make B2B sales can we treat as, what's a number that we should treat as a negative signal, or until which number is just a noise, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So I wanna talk about this in a slightly elaborate way. All right. I'm going to start with the statistic that answers your question as directly and in a Oxford Cambridge way as possible. In terms of email follow-ups, 11 is the number that the head of sales at Google told me for Portugal. All right. And that was the highest number anyone has given me so far. And that's the best number I've had because it's a good excuse, right? You know, and but understanding the psychology. So what I love about Stanford is all the professors I had and everything that they teach is all about organizational behavior and psychology, right? So why people reply to what, when, it's important. And you see this. Everyone here who's on LinkedIn gets fuckload of crap emails, right? And then the people trying to play the tricks by saying, oh, like I'm just going to give up now, Guess what? Someone has taught them to say that. It's a bona fide trick, right? They're not doing it authentically. It's probably something that Salesforce integrated or HubSpot is doing for them, right? But my cold emails are always start with creating value, right? Don't even necessarily ask for anything but 15 minutes of time. And the language that I would like to give the world is that even 15 minutes of time will pay substantial dividends for me and the rest of my career, or me and my team, right? I've used this sentence since I was 20, right? And it's my language, it's my authenticity, right? But similarly, you also have in terms of, rejection is an interesting thing, right? What does really rejection? It's like failure. Learn. And it's not just learning about them, it's about learning about yourself, right? What is critical when you're trying to learn is asking the right questions to yourself and the analysis. Now, one thing I do need to highlight, which is important and dear to me, is we have to understand and appreciate people's boundaries. We have to respect people, right? Understanding what those boundaries really are and how they work, this is a very complicated, difficult thing. It's very hard, especially in some cultures, for people to say no, right? It's not necessary we want to assume that something's there or no or not. We just want to make them feel as safe and comfortable. So the more they can do that, more you get that, it's fine. Sometimes giving them space is important. Sometimes walking away is important, but when you care as much as you do, Max, right? And I assume it's the same for a lot of people here. When you care and you're trying to sell your dream, I think it's safe to do 2-3 times before you really ask yourself what's going on. And then when you ask yourself what's going on, it's good to re-strategize, to understand better, right? It's good to walk away. Perhaps put your attention to someone else. Maybe it's 5 or 6 to someone else, right? But there is a case-by-case basis. So in a case of a VC, right? Initially, and VCs are very good at not saying no, because given what I was sharing with Mahad earlier, right? You start with a problem and you have a solution. Your solution might not make any sense right now, right? But it might make a lot of sense tomorrow, right? And the longer you persist at trying to make it sense, the more you stand out, right? So at 4 years of me doing my startup, right? People started talking to me just because I was still around doing my startup, right? It just shows that I'm not going to give up. And I still had my core team. I still had my CTO, right? It just showed something of value, because the first risk factor that VCs look at is team, right? Right now, people are talking about burnout as well, but they look at team, So if you as a team stick together, that's something exceptional already, right? So in the form of persistence, so let's go back to my Portugal examples, right? I had a point where I had problems with the first accelerator I got into, right? The head of the accelerator was quite nice and quite good, but there were other people in the organization who were, I would argue, were misinforming him, and were quite biased against us. Maybe there was a bit of racism, because I did experience that in Portugal. Maybe it was something else. I don't know. But I had instances where I had evidence that they were saying something and then lying, right? Now, we don't have to talk about this too much, and hopefully this will never go public because I don't want to put anyone under the bus. But at one point, I only felt there were two mentors from the group, from the community, and I was not a Portuguese person. I had made some friends, but in Portugal, there's also this reality that you had, especially in Lisbon, the whole world wants to live in Lisbon because of the weather, right? And the food is great, and the cost of living was cheap, and all of this. So people come and go because it's actually really hard to build a life there when you're a foreigner. Hard unless you've got money coming from abroad. So I did not have as many local friends in the beginning because people weren't sure if they wanted to invest their time and energy into me. I had my interns, I had my team, and I had two mentors from the program out of like 20 who liked what I was doing, who believed in me, right? So I stuck with them and stayed the course. One of them had an ice cream chain, so he was quite interested in using us, and we would try and help him with recruiting and things like that. So that was one of our first pilots. But I remember in that period when it was just so isolated, there were people who were talking to us and people who were not talking to us. I would just create a system for myself where I never gave up on any sale. I had people that I emailed 11 times, even when they ghosted me, even when we won a pilot, even when they disappeared after that, right? I never gave up, and I never made them feel, and I still don't make anyone ever feel, no matter how irritated, upset, and frustrated I've been, that I cannot forgive, never made them feel that I would judge them. I don't believe in judging people for being human. I believe in judging people for choosing to do bad things, right? Choosing to be selfish, right? Choosing to be slightly narcissistic. But I do not believe, I believe everyone has an opportunity, and it's just about waiting. And until then, about being as creative as I can. So I wanted to give this but sometimes, Max, you have to accept the no, because the no is a way of respecting the person. All right?
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much for your wisdom. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Any more questions? See, Peter. Peter, you want to ask something?
Yes,
you
yes,
now,
actually, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm looking very pensive, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, first of all. Yeah, so we're working on a AI native study abroad app for middle income countries, formerly known as the Global South. And obviously I'm in the UK, people are all over. We're working, the MVP is almost ready, but obviously I want to get to know the customer. We had a conversation a while ago about just, talking to people, basically what you said today, and I've been doing that. But sometimes, especially when introductions come through team members, for instance, interns and so on and so forth, how do I get people outside of our bubble to talk to us in an ethical way, right? Because we could go to where and we could say, okay, we're Oxford Research doing a paper on, study abroad experiences. Then we get blocked. We get blocked as well when we say we're building something.
So why do you get blocked? Why do you get blocked for saying that?
It always says no promotions. And we ask the moderator what's going on, no promotions. That's it. And then it ghosts us, right?
But so in that situation, first of all, from what you've described, I don't understand how you being a researcher or a student is a promotional activity, right? So what this means is that there's something that we aren't fully aware of, right? Now, have you reached out to the moderator?
Yes, we have. And so if we were blocked without comment, right? Then we asked the moderator, and all we got was no promotions.
Okay.
Right?
Do you know who the moderator actually is?
No, it's just the guy on Reddit, right? So it's just a handle.
Okay.
And
so what I would do with this particular handle in this particular situation, there's 2-3 things I would try, right? First is with Reddit, it's very easy to know what he's posting about. Right?
Okay, I'm just taking notes. Yeah.
Now I'm not saying stalk him. Please never stalk anyone. Please, I'd be the first to punch you in the face. But I recommend you try and within the space that you are interested in, right?
Yeah.
Within those groups, okay, so first of all, there's a book you need to read called The Psychology of Social Networks. Okay. And the reason I should have started there. Your approach to Reddit is just wrong.
Okay.
Right? And that's actually one of the reasons why they're so aggressive with you. Reddit is about trust. Reddit is designed as an anonymous community. And unlike Twitter, it's an anonymous community where people do not gang up on each other. Right? It's a community where people actually come together. So if you use Reddit to sell, right, that's not the intention that Reddit is for. That's not the intention of the subgroup. That's your mistake number one. Right? If you want to use Reddit, and I think Reddit's a fantastic place to do customer discovery, you need to be part of the people. So you have to show that you care about the same things, right? And this book, The Psychology of Social Networks, is where I understood that about Reddit. Before that, I didn't actually want to use Reddit as much because I personally don't like, other than, not wanting people to shit on me or find where I live and shit, like I like just being myself, right? So being anonymous makes me uncomfortable, to be honest. But within this context, I would do that. You also, I'm guessing, don't have very many Reddit points.
No.
Yeah. So,
not a
Reddit
frequent
points,
social media user.
Yeah. So Reddit points are a way for people to know that you're trustworthy, that you're a contributor to the community, right? Another approach is you make friends with someone else in the community and then ask them to champion you, like we said earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And similarly, so you find out who are the people who have really high Reddit points, right, in that group, and you try and start conversations with them. Like I'm trying my best to say this in a way which doesn't sound manipulative, but like fundamentally, if you want to become friends with someone, like you have to show you care about what they care about, right? But I just don't want my words to be misunderstood and misused by any human being. It's my trigger. If you care about it, you care about the problem, and that group is about the thing, then it should be very easy for you to not have to pretend.
Yeah.
But you can be very direct, but you can also be direct that, like, for you to translate it inside of you, that you're not just doing this for achieving a goal. Hopefully what I'm saying to you and what this book is going to say to you is that you have to see the value of that community in order to understand from it.
Okay.
So therefore your participation in it becomes authentic.
Okay. I'll check out that book. Yeah, I mean, this was the Indian studying abroad subreddit, which is quite big, and it's quite important for us because we're going to launch in India first.
Okay.
And the people I've met in Oxford so far are people from privileged backgrounds, right? So they have access to all sorts of admissions tutors and so on and so forth. There's obviously a bit of a problem with education agents, especially in India, right? Falsified information, so on and so forth. I just want to get the people who have the potential to go abroad, right? Get scholarships, so on and so forth, could afford to pay $9 for an app a month, but can't afford a better consultant that isn't shipping them off to Georgetown Backwater University or a place like this. So I'll keep digging at this because I want
so there's a few people, actually a few startups in the community looking at similar problems or trying to attack this, but you specifically, if you can reframe your value proposition, like exactly what you do, what would you say? What was that again?
Which part of it?
There's just fundamentally, what is it you're trying to solve?
Well, we're trying to democratize access to Western higher education for people from middle-income countries. What does that mean? First,
Western
we inform
AI education or Western education?
Western education.
Okay,
so
cool.
UK,
right.
US, Canada, but obviously much
Yeah.
broader scope long term, and there's multiple components to this, right? First of all, inform people about the opportunity of going abroad and then telling them how to do that. And the AI comes in, basically, we're building AI tools that help you optimize your CV, but specifically write personal statements, admissions essays, and so on and so forth, but not in a way ChatGPT would do, where it generates it for you. It just tells you, okay, what information does need to be in there and how to phrase that That's all, right? And that's an interactive editing tool, at least in its current.
Yeah. So one thing I'd say, Peter, is like, I like the essence of the problem, right? I like the problem, but and you've already started, and sometimes you're doing the solution, so you can. So some of these solutions you're doing, maybe it's not worth doing the solution for the sake of solving the problem, but maybe use some of these solutions in order to get a funnel for customer discovery.
Exactly.
But when you do that, what's very, very important is that you understand the archetype that you funneled in, and make sure that you're not misrepresenting the entire broad based on that archetype.
Okay.
Right? Because, and so again, do interviews with them.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as I did with recruiting. It's almost the same thing. Okay. But other ways of democratic access. So Francisco, El Amigo, as I like to call him, who used to be with us, he tried to solve this problem by creating a liberal arts online university. And at the moment, I haven't spoken to him in a while, but it was called Casillas or Free Organ. Maybe you can look it up online. But there are many ways to try and solve this, but this fundamental is like democratic access to Western education. Now, why Western? You also, so thanks, Mohammed. Enjoy. Yeah. And so by doing the customer discovery and and you're basically saying you're trying to find people at scale. You're trying to be efficient. I'm going to quote YC, do things that don't scale. Go outside, you're at a university, come to London, go to Birmingham, go to Manchester, go to every single town, and just speak to students at university campuses. If you're targeting India, like the manager at my Sainsbury's, fantastic chap, he's just been a student. Half the people who work in restaurants in the past, you've seen this explosion of Indian people. They basically were brought in order to basically take care of a lot of labor shortages by giving them much easier visas to study.
Yeah.
So you are you're looking at the wrong places because you're trying to be efficient.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's the German in me who's always looking to be efficient. The other thing is,
not just you.
The other thing,
everyone. Yeah, please ask. Keep going.
Like, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but UK universities, for instance, they spend £500 million each year on agents abroad to recruit international students, right? Because international students add a huge chunk of money to the economy. They're the only thing that really makes universities money. And we've been talking that actually our actual customer, the source of money for this company, should be the universities, right?
So we have a startup
we should
that
make this app
specializes
free.
in this. No, I agree. And we have a startup that specializes in this. They actually got in the finals of the 2024 Oxbridge AIx Challenge. They're a startup. And send me a message after this. I'll send you the name. I'm just not, but they're very good, and they figure this out as well. But it's just one way of. Sorry, Alexa, stop. It's just one way of skinning the cat. We have other startups that are looking at similar thing, completely different approach. There's so many millions of people who want this problem solved, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I had this problem myself. Yeah. So there's so much shit that went wrong in my own going abroad journey. I mean, that's blowing out the scope of this. Yeah, but I look at all of this. I'm sure I'll see you around. I'll shoot you a message afterwards. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm always here to have a chat. Just calls, not WhatsApp messages. Thanks, Dorian. Appreciate it. Any questions before I say bye in the next? I've got dinner in half an hour, so I'm here for another 15 minutes if anyone wants. I'm seeing my good friend Matthias tomorrow, so we can start a conversation here and tomorrow in Cambridge. But
message you on WhatsApp.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Take another opportunity to let you know, because I know you have 1,572 unread messages.
yeah, don't worry. But yeah, I want to answer questions, peeps, because your questions hopefully will be very valuable for others who listen to the recording. I'm going to start. Yeah.
It's a bit of a longer question actually, and it requires some context. That's why I messaged you.
Okay.
But it would be cool to discuss it tomorrow.
Yeah, is it okay we discuss it tomorrow at the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be speaking to Yongshi after this as well, actually, so I might not. I'm only going to give us 5 minutes more because I want to give Yongshi time. I promised him. Sasha? Nalima, you're going to ask a question?
Right. That's right. Thanks, Udai, for the insightful talk. So many pointers to work on. So as you know, I've spoken to you before. So our startup is into AI tool in the technical support space. And we have built our MVP and we have given our product to a couple of companies. And we iterated on the feedback and we learned a great deal from that. And today you might have seen the announcement. So we got one of the pilot converted into a customer now. They're operating in the defense space. So what I've
Epic.
been
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you. So what I've been doing is like reach out to other similar companies that match the same portfolio, and also doing a bit of a customer discovery now to iterate on the product a bit more. And what I find when I approach, because we are especially catering for the regulatory or the defense space, so I get to reach the people, open up a conversation. This is all like cold outreach via LinkedIn. But the moment I ask a question, they would be like, we are not sure whether we would be able to share this information. They immediately start thinking okay, who are you now asking this question to us?
Yeah.
So how do I break that? How do I show them that this is a legit conversation to build a product that's that's going to serve the wider community?
So we have a cluster that we're building. We have many clusters. So first and foremost, get after me. I've been asking other people to do this, but get after me to make this cluster for defense, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And we'll also do a different cluster for you. So we have several startups in the community, and we are built on a support collaborate culture, right? So maybe we can start there. I want to bring you all together, right? But fundamentally, it's about trust.
Yeah.
So like everyone on this call can empathize with the people you're talking about, because you have something you care a lot about and you get scared, right? There's fear that someone's going to take something away from you or is going to diminish your chances. It takes a lot of rationalization, and even when people, like level 1, people don't even talk about the idea because they're scared someone is going to copy it, steal it, right? We can all say that at one point we've understood or appreciate that perspective. It's a similar thing, right? Especially when you're a founder and you're gung-ho and you're pushing, you become a little bit scary to some people. So what people do is they build trust, and trust takes time, and that's the main thing. Now, obviously, I can give you some suggestions of how to go about doing that or how to have different conversations. Within this context, is like you've spoken to one person, right? You could try speaking to someone else in the organization, and that person you speak to doesn't necessarily have to be within the organization itself. It could be adjacent to that person. It could be like a professor who taught that person or was part of that program. There's ways of getting in there. That's one. But how would you, if someone came to you, if I asked you the question, someone came to you with the same kind of thing, how would you want them to get to know you so that you feel comfortable that you can start talking to them?
I would look for the common connections first, and depending upon if they, of course, if I'm in a defense industry, definitely if they ask specific questions, I would be wary of answering them immediately, unless I understand, the reason behind it. So probably reaching out to my common connection and building some trust via that.
So that's one. Having people in common, because trust is transferable. This is what my thesis was on, trust, So that's one that can help, but it can help only to some level, right? Second is reciprocity, right? Reciprocity of time, attention. So like in the Reddit group example of Peter, right? When people see, if Peter engages on Reddit and people see he's engaging on Reddit, they're living in the same space, right? Over time. So in that book, Peter, you'll see this example of this lady who she's basically like the Reddit queen for Wendy's, the burger place. Yeah, and Wendy's is really well on Reddit, and the book talks about that. But the reason it went so well is that this person, despite being, it's her job, you know, she's doing it for Wendy's, but she just was there all the time, right? So Nilima, right? The more they see you, the more they'll also begin to trust you.
Okay.
Right? What's the third? Let's go number 3. What do you think is the third way for you to build trust, for someone to build trust with you?
I'm also like reaching out to the collaborators or the startup spaces that particularly put the tech in, enable basically, put the startup companies in touch with the defense space. Probably going through them will again add more credibility and improve the trust factor.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you my favorite thing to do, right? Which I think everyone here on this call has always seen me do. I just tell people exactly what I want, who I am, and I'm just super transparent, you know? Like, I remember Peter, I haven't spoken to Peter properly in a year in person, but I remember Peter was trying to figure out what the fuck I want. I kept telling him, you know? I tell everyone.
It's been
all
6
the time.
months, Brent. It's been 6 months.
6 months, cool. Sorry. Yeah. But I tell everyone who I am, what I want, as plain in English as I can. And people just like, why is he doing that? You know? But I'm ready to be vulnerable. So, you know, if you're ready to be vulnerable, maybe that will work for you.
For what it's worth, I did find it quite irritating to begin with, but after a while I think it helped me. I'm sure we can have a conversation in person about this sometime, but I think it helped me.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not offended that you find it irritating. You know, it's like because everyone has an agenda. My agenda is I'm just telling the whole fucking world what my agenda is. I want to help everyone. You know, I want to die feeling like we don't have to be a dick to succeed. That's yeah. Nilima, I hope that helped. Again, very happy to do a session with you. You know,
Yes, yeah. I'll book one with you. Thanks, Udai.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else before I've got 1 more minute, one last question, if anyone wants. How about you guys give me some feedback? Can you guys give me feedback? Like, and please don't be nice about it. Other than the fuck ups with the screen, right? Give me some feedback on what I've just talked about. Like the session masterclass. It's my first masterclass. That bad.
I found it.
Session
I
was
found
great.
it incredibly useful, and having been on the journey now, all the pointers here, I made a note of all the pointers to try out, and certain quotes like customer for life and 11 email follow-ups. I think, yeah, definitely, I'm not going to give up now. 11 is the bare limit now.
Yeah, but you can't do 11 like once a week and you go to 11. You need to give it time. I don't know. Just remember that.
Being patient is another one. Yes, yeah. So a lot of pointers, and especially mapping out the org structure and how do we go about doing that. The tricks that you mentioned. Yeah, very useful pointers.
Yeah, there's yeah, it's also it's also useful to have this because then you can understand when someone is trying to do this to you, right? Then you're in a better place to decide whether you want to invest your own energy. You know, that's why, yeah, Dale Carnegie.
And also delivering everything delivering all these points via little stories from your experience helps us, helps the audience, relate to that situation better, and also associate and remember the story for longer.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I like telling stories. I really attribute my time in Ireland with the fantastic people of the Emerald Isle. My love for telling stories, that it was really powerful. But I have a question. Do you feel that as a beginner sales 101 kind of part 1, do you feel like I covered the right content for people to get started and as a foundation?
I think so, but one advice I'd have is to maybe move a little bit slower over the content. It was low-key speed run, which is good, but at the same time, if your phone rings or the dog barks and you lose 1 second catching up with where you're at,
yeah,
it becomes a bit of a struggle.
it's good. I couldn't see myself. I could only see the screen, so it's harder to pace myself. But Matthias, good feedback. Thank you very much. Good news for you. You will get this recorded, and you can choose to slow it down.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
One for me, I didn't know this would be a series, by the way. So I thought, I'd like a bit more information about, cold calls, cold emails, and so on and so forth. So if you could sort of foreshadow that at the beginning, I think that would have been, maybe I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. But also thank you for the call, giving Claude AI some airtime, which is clearly superior to ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, like I mean, you need ethics if you want to be authentic, right? You need ethics. Claude and Gemini all the way. Yeah. ChatGPT just wants to make you feel like you're addicted to it and you're happy. It's good. Like this, I like a lot of the technology, but yeah, it's not my personal thing. And I am not going to, in my good conscience, recommend any salesperson use Meta. So, because it's if you really want to sell anything at any cost, yeah, sure, that's your LLM, that and Grok, LLM of choice.
I wanted that you can say that you think Sam Altman is Cam Altman.
No, I'm not going to call him scam. I have
I'm
deep
just
respect.
joking.
Yeah, but I have deep respect. Listen, very dangerous people we're talking about here. Rulers of the world right now. I'm a humble guy. Yeah.
Maybe cut that part off the recording.
Me. Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. Honey, and hopefully you see this when you see the recording. But yeah, no, but I genuinely I quote Sam Altman from his YC perspective, almost as much as I quote Paul Graham. There's a lot of I talked about doing things that don't scale. Now, maybe Sam wasn't the first one to say that, but he says it the best. Like really, really drills that message. Do things that don't scale, and I think he's a fantastic communicator. And really,
that's true.
Yeah. And
but your point about ChatGPT still stands. They're having some problems. They're getting like a lawsuit now because apparently ChatGPT was being so psychophantic that it kind of incentivized someone to commit a murder-suicide in Sweden, I think. So they're being sued by the estate of one of the deceased, and it becomes like a major, how much should an LLM say that you're incredible and everything you're doing is great when whatever it is that you want to do is something not particularly great, as this was the case.
I mean, it's fascinating since that incident happened. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's fascinating how not just ChatGPT, but other LLMs have just switched off.
Interesting. No, I didn't notice that, actually. I never liked the psychophantic thing, especially because you asked a quick question like, where is London? And they give you a 3-page answer. So I put like system prompts to like be objective and
see that.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would say much very quickly is like, if you wanted to learn from OpenAI, there's so much to learn from OpenAI. He's really playing every awesome playbook for startup growth that you can think of. It's the blitzscaling playbook Reid Hoffman talks about. It's a really, like, you just see it. You're seeing it in real time. It's amazing. I mean, they've grown so fast, considering where they started. Now, with that, because I want to give some attention to Yongxi, who, by the way, is kicking ass, in my opinion. If anyone wants to, especially in the Middle East, be part of his platform to help influencers and everything, I recommend it. Yongxi is the type of founder, I'm not singing only him, but he's the type of founder I absolutely love to help. Humility and character in spades, works his ass off, really cares and solves the problem. We just need to make sure he understands the value of what he's doing, because he's kicking ass, in my opinion. Now, with that, I'm going to say goodbye, everyone. All right. Berfu Kamara Gayendra. Is that the right way of pronouncing it?
Yeah, Gajendra, yeah.
Gajendra, yeah. Honge, Andrea, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And Ping Sun, Sasha, thank you for coming and sticking around. Cool. Andrea will be honest with me
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Yeah. Ciao. Bye.
Thanks, Udai. Bye. Good night.
Thanks. Bye.